Batman and his villains have one of the most intense dynamics in comics history. From psychotic masterminds to tragic antiheroes, each villain brings out a different side of the Dark Knight. But who are the top 10 villains that truly push Batman to his limits? And who are the specific 10 villains that I honestly feel are the most captivating and the most interesting out of all of the villains that he has? And it is quite a good few. But today, we're going to be counting down Batman's top 10 most unforgettable enemies and looking at why each of them holds a special place in Gotham's dark hierarchy. Coming in at the number 10 spot is no other than Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange might not be well known as well, specifically as well known as some of Batman's other villains, but he has an early and unique place in the Batman mythos. One of the first major Batman villains, Strange is a criminal psychologist with an obsession with the Dark Knight. Strange doesn't attack Batman physically, but instead he focuses on unraveling Bruce's mind. He is one of the first to deduce Batman's secret identity, using it against him to play mind games few others could absolutely match. We have seen Strange in a couple different mediums, most specifically the Gotham TV show, which he's just one of those kind of villains that is very, very interesting in my own mind because we know Batman has a very specific kinds of villains, and they usually kind of just grab down to people that challenge him physically and people that challenge him mentally. And Strange is just one of the people that really challenges him mentally in a very specific way that I actively truly admire. Now, the reason why Strange sits at this number 10 spot is because while he is extremely intelligent and psychologically dangerous, he doesn't have the physical power or the reach of others on this specific list. His tactics are mental, creating a very subtle but persistent threat that haunts Batman's psyche. So it just kind of wouldn't go up to the level of some of the other people on this specific list. Now, sitting at the number 9 spot is none other than our boy Clayface. Once a struggling actor named Brazil Carlo, Clayface turned to crime after a traumatic transformation that left him with the power to shapeshift and turn into anybody. Clayface is an honestly more favorite villain of mine just due to his specific abilities and due to the way that we've kind of seen him portrayed very rarely in a lot of actual more live action or just in a very more broad specific format. We obviously have seen him in a couple animated shows, and he usually is a very, very interesting character to me, and when we actually see him, he's just usually quite literally more of a highlight in my opinion. Clayface's power allows him to blend into basically any setting, infiltrating even the most secure areas and creating mass chaos through his impersonation. His fluid, shape-changing form makes him a nightmare in combat as he can slip through Batman's attacks and regenerate. We've seen specifically in something like the Arkham games on how Clayface actively is able to move and operate in the specific ways that it is very hard to kind of take him down unless you've specifically already prepped for someone like him. Now, the reason that Clayface is ranked here is because of the constant threat that he poses to Batman's sense of trust. With his position and specifically the way that he's able to do a lot of things, he's just a very interesting villain in general, but his position is kept lower since he often lacks the calculated menace of the more strategic villains that are going to be coming up on this list. He is very well formidable, but his approach tends to be straightforward, focusing more on disguise than long-term schemes that would very well be better suited for some of the better villains on this list, in my opinion, obviously. Here at the 8th spot is none other than Pamela Isley, or otherwise known as Poison Ivy. She is a botanist turned eco-terrorist with a deep love for plants and a resentment towards humanity for damaging the environment. She is quite possibly one of my more favorite Batman villains just because of the entire kind of way that she actively goes about. The entire way that her story is set up and her actual character in general has always been just so interesting to me. And the things that she's able to do with her ability to control plant life is just usually so absolutely amazing to see. Obviously, as I've already said, she can control plant life to do her bidding, creating lethal traps and weapons out of the natural world. Her mind control powers add another layer of like danger because the fact that she can just use plants to really actively control basically anybody, and she can turn allies specifically against Batman. She is a very dangerous villain when you come to think about it, and we've seen her in very, very many mediums because she is one of the better and easier characters to actively bring into the live action format without causing a very just like making it look very bad. Obviously, we've seen her in things like Batman Forever, the Gotham TV show, and a good few other mediums, but we've literally always seen her being someone actually that Batman has to think about, somebody that actually can be placed as an active threat. Now, obviously, Ivy makes it only to the number 8 spot because she is unpredictable and has powers that Batman cannot counter directly. She brings a sense of balance between nature and human ethics, forcing Batman to question his own moral stance because, in all fairness, while she is a villain and does quite a good few heinous and horrendous things, she does have some kind of correct mindset about everything, but she just does it in the worst way possible. However, like obviously, her eco motivations make her slightly less personal in her attacks to Batman, just kind of keeping her very farther from the higher ranks and higher echelon of people. Now, up next at the number 7 spot is somebody that honestly could have made it fairly much higher on this list, and that is none other than the Penguin Oswald Cobblepot. With the absolute success of the Penguin TV show going on right now, he is quite possibly getting a lot more recognition and love that he's always truly deserved, in my opinion. We've always seen and basically been given Oswald as more of not this big, giant, serious medium and big, giant, serious person that we should be taking as a threat. Now, with this Penguin show coming around, people are actually kind of getting more enthralled into who the Penguin is and actually having a lot more fun with his character, getting a lot more fans into his character and Batman in general. Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, is a high society crime boss who combines his family's wealth with the desire for underworld power, bringing Gotham's entire elite and just entire criminal elements basically to his knees, like to its own knees. Unlike other villains, Penguin operates with a degree of respectability and uses his criminal enterprise as a front for other legitimate more businesses. He is a very strategic mind and uses his unique wealth, influence, and connections, making him a very nearly untouchable person by the traditional crime fighting methods. Oswald is a character that is honestly just so much more interesting to me due to the fact that he could easily be someone that could more be centered in the real world. Obviously, not to the same extent and the exact same like highs and like the way methods that he actually does in canon, but he's just a character and a person that I actually truly just enjoy seeing anytime that they are on screen. The Penguin's intelligence and resourcefulness makes him a major player in Gotham, and his mob boss approach gives him a very long lasting power. He ranks higher than Ivy and Clayface, specifically due to the fact of his sustained influence over Gotham's entire underworld, but he more specifically lacks the psychological intensity of the higher ranking villains. Now, standing at the number 6 spot is Two-Face. Formerly Gotham's celebrated district attorney Harvey Dent fell from grace after an acid attack scarred half of his face, transforming him into probably one of the most dual-minded criminals, obviously in Two-Face. But he's just honestly a character that I honestly do truly love. His entire relationship and history with somebody like Batman kind of really just draws him higher on this list for me due to that entire history. He is a character that relies and has so much resilience in so much of what he does. It just makes him very interesting to see. Two-Face's resilience on a coin flip to decide his actions makes him one of Batman's most unpredictable enemies, and he knows the law inside and out, which he uses in his understanding of Gotham's entire legal system against specifically somebody like Batman. He is one of the most intelligent persons that Batman has to go against due to the fact of him knowing so much about law and the entire history. He is a character that, as I've already said, has had a very good relationship with somebody specifically of Bruce Wayne, doing to the point of before he became who he is now. Bruce had even considered revealing his actual identity to him because he considered him an active close friend. Their relationship is honestly something that I've really truly loved, and even if we go back to something like the Batman the Animated Series, or I can't remember if it was the animated series or just the 2004 Batman show in general, Bruce still has a connection to somebody like Harvey Dent, Two-Face, and has actively still is always trying to help him, getting to the point where Two-Face has literally said, good old Bruce Wayne, somebody that's always looking out, even after basically all of the things that he's done. This is a kind of relationship that I really just do truly loved seeing, and it's just something that I've kind of really just helps put him even higher on the list than a couple of the other people that have been put here. Harvey's history with Bruce adds just a layer of tragedy, and Batman feels responsible for his downfall, which kind of fuels their complicated relationship. That's basically one of the main reasons that he is ranked at 6. Because while his motives are personal, his dual nature often allows his schemes to kind of fit the chaos rather than the organized long-term plans. He is a character that is just so well done and so well made that his rank couldn't really go any lower. Now, sitting here right smack in the middle is none other than Ra's al Ghul, the centuries-old leader of the League of Assassins. Ra's al Ghul is a master tactician with the mission to rid the world of its human disease. The reason why he is so dangerous is because Ra's challenges Batman not only physically but ideologically. He sees Batman as his heir, leading to a rivalry that is both combative and strangely paternal. His resources and training make him one of the few who could actually match Batman on almost every single level. The reason why he is just such a fan favorite character of mine is because his entire relationship with somebody like Bruce. The fact that he is quite literally the father, the grandfather of one of Bruce's own kids, and he is kind of forced to have a very close relationship with Bruce. Now the fact that they are quite literally family. Bruce is a character that knows that he can't really just abide by anything that Ra's does, and they fight on almost any constant specific level, but their entire just relationship is something that is usually just so much more chaotic and so much more compelling that it just really just makes it an interesting story to see anytime that we see them both on any page or just on any screen together. The reason why he's ranked here is because he is very much a very weird case. He ranks at 5 due to his unmatched intelligence and his moral boundaries with specifically somebody like Batman. However, his ambitions are often the target of the world at large rather than Gotham itself, making the threat feel more global than personal. That's mainly the main reason I just kind of have him right smack down in the middle. He is one of Batman's most interesting villains, but he's not just a Batman villain. He does a lot of other things, but obviously Batman's usually just kind of the main focus, but he is a person that kind of has a more global reach than anything specifically else. Now, getting into our number 4 spot would be Mr. Freeze. Dr. Victor Freeze, obviously better known as Mr. Freeze, is a tragic figure driven by his desperate need to save his cryogenically frozen wife, Nora. He is a character that I honestly truly love and admire because he isn't a villain for the cold just logic of I want to do evil and I want to do these things because I just kind of enjoy it, but he actually has a full reason on what he's doing. He's trying to save somebody that he actually cares about, and he has a very much more really well driven and well motivated storyline and plot for everything that he does. Victor's cold based weaponry and invulnerability to extreme temperatures makes him nearly impossible to fight head on, and his motivations are very sympathetic, which forces Batman to balance stopping Freeze and understanding his very, very meaningful plight, his entire full reason for doing everything that he does. Victor ranks this high because he is more than a villain. He is actively more of a tragic anti-hero, and while yes, he is a very much villainous thing, his motives give him more of a unique place among Batman's other villains, pushing him to kind of draw on Batman's empathy and resolve to the limit. His icy powers are formidable, but his tragic story makes him one of Batman's most complex adversaries that I just had to put on this high on the list for that specific exact reason. Now, starting off in who I think is in this top 3 of Batman villains would have to be the one of the most underrated Batman villains of all time. This being Thomas Elliott's Hush, a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne that harbors a bitter jealousy that drives him to become this villainous person called Hush, a villain obsessed with ruining Bruce's life. The reason why this character is so dangerous is because Hush knows Batman on a personal level, using psychological and physical tactics to torment him. He manipulates other villains and brings Batman's entire past into question, creating schemes that hit so much closer to home. Hush is easily one of my favorite Batman villains due to the fact of how interesting and how close his story hits to just someone like Batman. He is a character that does not get nearly the amount of the much love that he deserves, and even in the one time that we basically did actually get him in a live action format, they just changed his entire name, changed his entire character, and just called him the Riddler. In the 2022 Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, that entire Riddler that they have in that movie is not really truly Riddler. Yes, he does the riddles, but it's not really Riddler in any real format. The costume, the entire kind of just storyline that he has throughout this entire movie is more reminiscent to Hush and more akin to somebody like his character. He is one of the least used and least known Batman villains, but he easily specifically goes so far ahead and so much more interesting than almost any of the other Batman villains that we've ever been introduced to, hence why he aims and earns this specific part. He earns this third place spot because his motives are so deeply personal, making his attacks against Batman not only ruthless, but also immediately damaging. His plans are calculated and emotional, elevating his threat level beyond any kind of simple crime, which just kind of pushes him even farther into this active rating. Now, taking in the number 2 spot is, quite honestly, obviously, my second favorite Batman villain, and who I honestly feel is that second top tier Batman villain. Scarecrow, Dr. Jonathan Crane, a former psychologist, became Scarecrow to explore fear, using his terrifying toxin to force people to confront their worst nightmares. Scarecrow's fear toxin hits Batman where it hurts most, forcing him to face his own inner demons. And his toxin just based schemes really create a citywide terror, showing Gotham's vision of their worst fears. Like, this is a character that I honestly just truly love because of the entire implications that it has on him. Even if we just talk about something like the Arkham Asylum game, which I have talked about quite immensely on this channel when I first did start it up, Scarecrow is a very specific kind of villain that his toxin will detriment anybody, will get into anybody. And specifically when we have someone like Bruce, His entire mindset is about trying to keep calm and collected and having to deal with fear toxin and fight his own inner demons and fight his own past, fight all of the pain that he's felt through his entire life is just something that honestly hits so close and is just so much more intriguing than anything else about any of the villains that we have ever even had against Ghul against Batman. Scarecrow ranks this high because he doesn't just target Batman physically. He attacks his mind. Batman's battle with Scarecrow is a fight against his own fear, making Scarecrow one of the most psychologically impactful villains in Batman's entire Rogues Gallery arsenal. He's a character that just quite literally embodies the entirety of what Batman has been trying to avoid his entire life. Everything that still brings him back to that 10-year-old child that lost both of his parents, bringing him back into the darkness and despair that he just does not want to face anymore. But every time he has to deal with Scarecrow, it comes right back in tenfold. And now, obviously, we couldn't have had this list without this number one spot being mentioned at all. And obviously, he was going to be in the number one spot. The Joker. Batman's ultimate nemesis, an agent of chaos whose sole purpose is to test Batman's morality and resilience. The Joker is a character completely on his own, completely unpredictable, with no care for his own safety or sanity. His methods are brutal and twisted, using crime as an experiment to see if he can push Batman to his breaking point. And that is honestly one of my favorite things about him. The entire connection that just draws these two together is so compelling and just so forthright between the entire history of Batman alone that I literally just made a video talking about why the relationship is so compelling. Joker claims this top spot because he is far more than just a villain. He is the embodiment of everything Batman stands against. The Joker's mind games are brutal, and his crimes force Batman to constantly question his own limits. Their relationship is disturbing yet so compelling in a pseudo yin-yang dynamic, making the Joker Batman's greatest adversary. So, there you have it. My list of Batman's top 10 villains, bringing each something unique to the Dark Knight's journey. Each villain on this list has challenged Batman in very many different ways, shaping him into the hero that he is today, from calculated plots to raw chaos. They've tested his strength, his sanity, and his soul, and maybe that's what makes Batman's world so powerful. His villains are as much a part of his story as he is. But obviously, this is where I'm going to be holding off and ending off the video. If you guys did enjoy this and you guys agree with my rating, please comment down below. If you guys don't agree with my rating, please comment your top 10 Batman villains and we'll see if we kind of differ off. I do know that one of my friends that does YouTube called Comic Fiend is going to be kind of probably doing his own video on this with a more broad kind of baseline. I obviously only used any of Bruce Wayne's more specific villains, but he might be going into something like Terry McGinnis and actively talking about a good other few villains, and it's all good that we have differing opinions, but please just check out his video whenever that comes out, and make sure to come back and check out any of the other videos that I will be posting on here. But with all that said and done, I hope you guys did enjoy this one, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.